Hey there, fans of the Dad Space podcast. This is Bernie Borges. I'm the host of the Midlife Fulfilled podcast. On this podcast, I feature someone each Monday who shares a BF to AF story. This is where each week's guest shares a part of their midlife journey as early as their 30s, where they share a before fulfillment story, that's BF, and their after fulfillment story, that's AF. Check out episode 21 of the Midlife Fulfilled podcast, where Andrew shares how he strengthened his relationship with his two kids after he rediscovered his values and he put them into action. And now it's time to bring out your host of the Dad Space podcast, David Campbell.
Okay, everyone, welcome back to Dad Space. You know, the podcast for dads by dads, and I have a dad who's here with us, and I'm so excited. I've had some great guests in the past who are now retired, out of the service, and doing other things in life, but my guest today he's still actively serving his country, which is amazing to me. There's something special about these people, and to have them on my show makes me happy. And Queon is not only actively serving his country, he is a dad, he is a podcaster, that makes me even more happier. And so I'm really excited to have Queon on the podcast to talk about his dad journey and his show and have a great conversation. Queon, welcome to Dad Space.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate the opportunity, and I think I mentioned to you before. So, Mediocre Dads is, you know what? Let's go back. So, I am Queon. I go by Q. I am the host of Mediocre Dads. So, that is my podcast. That is my show. And with Mediocre Dads, my biggest thing was trying to kind of reach dads, but reach people, and help people. Because I have a story, just like everybody else has a story, but I do think the impact of my story can definitely help others feeling in a place of like, well, no one understands me. And so, but with Mediocre Dads, specifically with you, I just want to say thank you, because this is a big deal for us, and diversifying and kind of getting out there, because last year was just a lot of me and maybe a few of my buddies, but now it's me and then people, and I'm going on different shows and doing a lot of great things in 2024. So I'm really excited for this opportunity and many more to come.
It's amazing. I love it. And now I can call you Q, which is awesome.
Yes.
That's even really cool. So tell everybody kind of where you are in the U.S. right now. You told me earlier that you have been around the world, which is amazing. But yes. Right now, where are you stationed?
So I'm currently stationed in San Antonio, Texas. San Antonio is if you've ever been to San Antonio, it's awesome. It's a great city. I love it. A lot of traffic, and that's one of the reasons why I can't wait to leave. Because I am not a fan of traffic, especially because I drive a big truck, and so being in traffic is not fun. But in San Antonio, I've been stationed in Texas previously, because I was there's a location it's called Fort Hood. It's in Killeen. And so when I first joined the military, that's where I was. And then I would visit San Antonio, Dallas, Fort Worth, and all the different areas. But in San Antonio now, and it's been a good time. I've enjoyed my time here, and it really has allowed me to get closer to my family, because there's a lot of family activities to do here. So
amazing. And I know, talking to other past guests, the things that you do as part of your day-to-day can be quite diverse from
yes.
Men and women serving behind a computer, or flying a Apache helicopter, or serving in a submarine. Like, there's so many things that people can do. Mm-hmm. So can you give us a little sense of what you do in your role currently?
Yeah. So in the military, I do counterintelligence. The best way I can explain it is, if you ever see the show NCIS, yeah. I do that for the Army. Okay. And so less drama, obviously, like NCIS. It's a TV show. Yeah. But it is NCIS is a real organization within the Navy. But we do that. What I do is very similar, or what closely related to what happens on NCIS.
I had a service member on who is in the Navy serving in Japan right now, and that's what he does. And I'm like,
oh, awesome.
Oh, like, yeah. He's so amazing. He's like, oh, I got stories. I can't really tell you many of them, but I got stories. Yeah, and I'm like, okay, wow. So
yeah,
there you go.
that's the hard part. It's I have a lot of stories, a lot of things I've been a part of. Can't talk about those things, of course, but they, some funny, some kind of comical, and you would never think like, do you guys look into stuff like that? And you're like, yeah, I don't know. You have to, and some pretty serious, but yeah, it's a good job. It's a fun job. I enjoy what I do, and getting to interact with people, because part of my job, or a big part of my job, requires me to talk to people. It's and one of the prerequisites coming into the job is having the ability to speak to other people, and just like anybody. So it's kind of like you're sitting at a bar and someone's like, "Hey, go talk to that group over there," and being able to go do that is a huge skill in my job, because we never know who we're going to be talking to, and especially in the military, we'd be talking to senior leaders such as a colonel or general, and we have to be able to go into that room and hold our own and have a conversation with this, even though this person has a high ranking, and if you will, still be able to articulate our point and get our intent across. So.
Nice. So on top of all the stuff you do, serving your country, you're a podcaster. Speaking of using your voice.
Yes.
Right. So how is podcasting helping you serve in your role? But how are you gaining confidence as a podcaster? We're going to have you on the How to Podcast series to talk about this more. But it's just interesting to know the connection between podcasting and what you do. Is there a correlation at all with it?
Yes and no. So I've always been, I've always had the gift of the gab. And I don't know if you're familiar with that saying, but it's always been a thing that I've had, and the ability, I say an ability or skill that I've had. And so, even though with my job and I do a lot of talking, kind of going into podcasting, it was an easy transition, if you will, of just being able to, I'm used to talking, and in this instance, I don't necessarily have to talk to someone at the moment. I can talk to just a camera, and that's kind of where it started. But it kind of going back to my job now, by doing podcasting, I have found myself being more comfortable in certain situations that I necessarily wasn't comfortable in before.
Good.
And I didn't feel like I was as knowledgeable as I should be on a topic. But now, I've with podcasting, due to podcasting, having to do research, having to be able to know what I'm talking about, not just make a fool of myself in front of a camera. That's allowed me to improve in my job and kind of go sit in those rooms and listen, and then be like, okay, boom, this is the point. This is the intent that we're trying to get across. And conversations are a lot easier, if that makes sense. It kind of flows better, because I've had to utilize active listening within my job, but then also with podcasting, especially being on other people's podcasts. So,
yeah. Love it. So tell us about your show. Let's promote.
All right. Yeah. So Mediocre Dads, so I kind of was telling you, from a young age, when I was adopted when I was 2 years old, and by a white family. Not a big deal, right? But me and my twin brother, we were adopted at a young age, and so two young black kids, with a all white family. Some instances were very, very strange, right? I remember going to a Sam's Club or a Costco, and I don't know if you guys have those.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna lie. All right, so going to a Sam's Club or a Costco, you have to show your Sam's Club or your Costco card, right? And they usually have a person at the door. Well, I remember my dad and my mom had kind of walked ahead of us, because me and my brother were messing around, and like, come on, or you can get left behind. So we went to run in behind them. And the lady at the door, she was like, she goes, "Oh, where are your parents at?" I was like, "They're right there. They're right in front of us." And they're like, she's looking for someone who's black. And we're she's like, "No, we're right there." And she's like, and she thought we were trying to pull her leg or something. And so, I ended up yelling, calling my parents, like, hey. And they turn around. My dad comes, he's like, "What are you doing? Getting mad at us?" And I was like, she wouldn't let us in. and he was like, "Can you let my kids in, please?" And she was like, "Oh, these are," yes. And she's like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." And they're like, and you could see my dad, because the conversation has come up before. He's been experienced that before. But anyway, I kind of give that example and that story, and that why it's important is because I was very fortunate. Me and my brother were very fortunate to have a family, to have a dad, to have a mom who cared about us. and then to teach us everything that we know now. So fast forward to now, Queon becomes a dad, and rather than feeling like I'm playing from behind the curve, I'm not necessarily at advantage, but I'm also more prepared than I would say if I had not been adopted. I wasn't fortunate enough to be adopted and grow up in a family that I did. And so Mediocre Dads for me was kind of really being able to show people that, hey, it is possible. It is possible to come from a different, a non-typical background and then still be a great dad. And Mediocre Dads for me was just being able to get my voice out there, especially in a time in society where I don't want to go too deep into it, but where racism is such a big deal, and everybody was just saying this group of people is evil versus it's this first group of people versus this group of people.
Yeah.
And then being able to use my voice to say, no, it's actually, we're all people, we're all humans, and and this is how I was raised. So for you to believe that is believe, and I'll just say it for people to believe that all white people are racist, all white people are evil. I'm like, no, that's not the case at all, right? Because if that was the case, why was I adopted by an all-white family? Why did they deal with me and my brother's BS, truthfully, as we got older, by getting in trouble in school? And why did they deal with all that if that was the case? They wouldn't have done that. And so that's not to put that label on everybody rather than being able to identify, like, no, that individual said or did these things to show or prove that they are that way. And so at a time like that, and that was kind of at a time like that was going on, still partially today, I felt that it was very important for a voice like mine to get out and say, like, hey, no, like, let's stop hating labeling each other and hating each other. Like, there's so much more out there, right? And then the biggest thing was being the dad. I always look forward to being a dad, and the moment it happened, I wasn't as ready as I thought I was, and I think that's for a lot of people. And so Mediocre Dads was an outlet for me to kind of vocalize that, and then also tell some people what the things that I've learned throughout my time as being a dad so far, and as my kids get older, as my girls get older, kind of share more of that. So that's where Mediocre Dads. If you want to know more about Mediocre Dads, Instagram, Facebook, that's where I am at. I am on X. I don't post a lot on X because I guess formerly Twitter, only because I'm not really big into Twitter. I don't know. I've never really been a Twitter person or an X person. So like, I'm on there, but I'm not really active on there as much as I am on Facebook and Instagram. Working on a website right now, so you can. It's just kind of one click, and you can go to that. My website will take you to all of my stuff. You can see all my things. So website coming soon, but. Good. As of right now, Mediocre Dads is on Instagram, Facebook. All of my episodes are going to be on Spotify, YouTube, Rumble, and Apple Podcasts. So
good. Amazing.
Yes.
Good stuff. So okay, let's go back to your dad story a little bit. Can you go back to the moment when you realized you were going to become a dad, or somebody called you dad for the first time? I had a guy come on, and he said that he remembers the doctor turning to him at one point in the hospital and saying something along the lines of, "Are you okay, Dad? If we do this type thing." And that was the first time anyone has ever said the word dad to him, to him, like referring to him. And he was just like no one's ever called me that before. Like, I feel like so overwhelmed and nervous all at the same time and excited, but no one's ever called me that. And he was like, I can tell you the day, the time, the moment, the location where I was called dad for the first time. Can you go back in time in your mind? And what was that like to kind of realize that you're actually going to be a dad?
So, it's funny. So obviously 9 months of pregnancy and with my first daughter, and, I knew what came with that. Right. And so even when my daughter was born, I was like, oh yeah, I'm a dad. Right. Just say, it felt natural to be able to say, because, that's the truth at the matter of, like, I am a dad now. Right. Yeah. But fast forward to when my oldest starts talking, and one of the first things that she says is dada or dad or daddy, whatever the case might be. Right. And that is the moment when it sank in for me of like, oh no, I'm a dad. right? And you see the tone difference in versus, yeah, I'm a dad versus, no, I'm a dad. Like that, the implications of being actually realizing, understanding of I'm a dad and what that means became real when my daughter called me dad for the first time. And it was reinforced when my youngest, when I come home every day, she's like, Dada, everything's super excited. And she'll hold my phone. I have a picture of all of us on there, and she'll be like, and the only person she wants to point out is me. And so that reinforced those implications of the impact of just being a dad and what it means to me. And it was such a surreal moment to be called, when I was called dad for the first time, for my daughter, for my kids, because I was like, ooh, there's that weight. It's a heavy weight.
Yeah.
And, and that means being responsible, not only for myself and in some ways, not only for my wife, but also for these two little human beings who now rely on me as a source of food, to put food on the table, as a provider, as a leader, as someone who, as a man who's got to show them love and care for them, and they expect protection and all these things. So it was a heavy thing to sit there and to realize, like, oh no, I am a dad, right? Because anybody, I'm pretty sure many people have heard or seen, right? Anybody can be a dad, right? Anybody can, go and, have consensual intercourse with somebody, and then boom, kids pop out and they're say like, hey, I'm a dad now, right? But to be there every day, or every day that you can, I know some situations are different, but to be there, to be present, to be actively involved, to provide for your kids, to protect your kids, to make sure your kids are taken care of, that's a whole different battlefield of just saying, you helped make somebody, and now I'm a dad, versus, no, I'm a dad because these people rely on me and I have to be, I can't afford to let them down. You know what I mean? So it's a heavy thing, and I try not to go too deep into it, because it's a feeling of joy, but a fear as well. Yeah. Because I don't want to let them down. And I have let them down, and I never want to do it again, but I know that I'm not perfect, and I'll probably let them down again some other way, but I just hope it's not egregiously an egregious letdown. So
yeah, and whenever I talk to new dads on the podcast, just reminding them that, this is your first, you've never done this before. And like, let's not try to trick anybody here. You've never been a dad before, right? Yeah. And there's no manual. We've talked about that in the past. There's no manual that comes with the baby. This is what you do, A, B, and C, and you'll be a great dad. There's nobody there handing that out at the hospital. And you walk away from the hospital with your newborn. You and your partner, you leave the hospital, jump in the car, and you're like, nobody comes home with you. Nobody checks up on you, right? They just assume that your 3 days as a dad, you'll be fine, and you're just going to be great. So we're not even going to check up on you. And you're like no one's going to, like, we've had all this care, support with the nurses and the doctors, and you guys have all been great. And then you just, okay, you can go now. Yeah. And you're like looking behind you, like, there's no one following me to the car. There's no one coming home to make sure I do it right. And you're going to have to figure it out. So, yeah, that's hard. That's really, really hard.
It's almost like they can't wait for you to go, because they're like, I got, 10 other people in your exact position. Wish I could tell you more, but you'll figure it out. Yeah. You know what I mean? And you're just like, wait, hold on, wait, please, no, tell me more. I might be a special case. And they're like, I got time. Hey, get out the wheelchair, get in the car. You're good. You'll be walking, and you'll figure it out. I remember in 2018 when my firstborn was when she was born. I pull up around this little roundabout thing. My wife comes out in the wheelchair holding our new daughter. And I remember getting out the car, and I'm thinking like, all right, well, go ahead and put her in. But my wife just had the baby. So I'm like, I guess that responsibility falls to me. And this small, fragile human being in my hands, trying to put them in a car seat. You're just like, I don't want to move their arms like too much. You know what I mean? Like, I don't want to break them. I don't want, like, it was so scared of just hurting them. And I like I said, that the fear was real at that moment when I'm putting her in the car for the first time, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, like I don't want to hurt you, but like I have to put you in this car seat, and my wife's just sitting in the front seat. She's like, "Are you almost done?" Like, this is my first time doing this, You're like, you feels like you're solving a Rubik's Cube for the very first time. You're like, this is my first time. Could you give me some time here? And so I'm buckling and gently putting in there, and this child, my oldest, she's just passed out.
Yeah.
She was like, "Hey, I'm just riding one couch or not couch, but like one cloud to the next one. Just take me off to where I'm supposed to be sleeping, and I'll go to sleep." And so, very strange, very strange. I remember driving home. I'm going. This is the slowest I've ever driven, right? And I'm going like 45 miles per hour, and I'm thinking everyone around me is just a danger to society. I'm like, they are going way too fast.
How did I become my parent in that moment, right?
Oh,
you're like,
100%. 100%. Oh, man.
Get off my lawn. You're like, yeah, you're right away.
It was a real moment for me there. So, yeah, that was kind of coming from the hospital. It was like you said, a great moment, but very scary.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. And that's the idea from the podcast is I want dads, like especially new dads. Sometimes I picture when I do my own solo episodes on this show, I imagine a new dad sitting in the waiting room at the hospital. There's all those magazines that have been there since the 80s that are still sitting on the table. He's sitting alone. There's the smells and sounds of being in a hospital waiting room. And he's picks up his phone and there's Dad Space. There's Mediocre Dads. And he hits play on an episode. What do I want him to know before he walks down the hallway and goes through the doors in all the scrubs, walks into the room, and that's the moment he's going to become a dad. And all the nurses and all the busyness. And I remember them when they looked at me, they're like, okay, so just so you know, you're not the priority in the room. So if you pass out, we're not coming for you. You know, we're going to take care of your wife and the baby. No one's here to catch you. So if you're not feeling good, get out. And I'm like, I'm good. Right. And they're like, we're not catching you. We're not helping you. Right. And I'm like, I got it. We're all here for her. I get it. But I just try to imagine that guy walking down the hallway. And this is the last time he's going to walk down the hallway without the title of dad. Right. Mm-hmm. And for the rest of your life, you're going to be a dad. Right. Yeah. It doesn't go away. So you'll never not be called dad again. What do I want him to know as he walks the hallway in anticipation and complete fear that he's going to screw this all up? What do I want him to know? If you could talk to a dad that's going to walk the hallway today on the way down to that room and become a dad, what's your message? What do you want him to know?
I would say, and this might be too simple, but I hope it covers it, is take a deep breath and cherish every moment you have or you have coming towards you as a dad, but approach everything one day at a time. Yeah. Especially for new dads, approach everything one day at a time. If we can, it's so easy for us to try to be in a moment, but then from that moment, we're thinking 5, 10, 15 years from this moment, what's life going to be like? And all these little things around us that make up our life as a whole, right? And could impact now. You're like, this could hurt my child, or this could save my child. This couldn't hurt my child. All these different things are running through this person's mind of like, I have to protect this small little human being. And this responsibility is such a big responsibility. I don't know if I'm ready for it. And it turns into, the reality is, take a breath and take one day at a time. When I was able to kind of breathe in, breathe out 3 times, and then just approach, okay, like today is today. I can only control today. I can impact tomorrow, but I can't control tomorrow. So I can only focus and impact. I can only focus and change today. So today, what's almost like in being in the military? What's my mission for today? So I have this one mission, being a dad, and under that mission are 5 subset missions that all complement that main mission of being a dad.
Right.
And so if I can accomplish, say, 3 out of 5 of those submissions, then I'm doing a great job.
Yeah.
If I can't accomplish any of them, I sure hope something happened to prevent me from being able to accomplish those submissions. But that being said, did I meet the main intent? The main mission is being a dad, and being a dad means so many different things that you can't. It's so easy to focus on. So okay, I gotta play with my kids all day. Well, I'm just gonna be real with you. Depending on how old they are, they're not going to play with you all day. Believe it or not, they're going to get annoyed with you just as much as you could not get annoyed with them. But well, I'll be very frank, as much as you will get annoyed with them. You know what I mean? So like they're becoming their own person. But anyway, I won't get too deep into that. But like I said, new father walking down the aisle in the hospital, going to go see his now baby and his significant other, is take every day one day at a time. One day at a time. Take a breath, take one day at a time. And sure enough, one day turns into 2 days, 3 days, 4 days, and then a year, 2 years, 3 years have gone by. And then in my case, my oldest, she's 5, going on 6 in May. And I could tell you I still remember looking back and remember being in the hospital and being like, oh my gosh, I remember when you were born. Yeah. And now I officially sound like an old person.
There you go. Good job.
When people are like, hey, I remember you were this big. It used to be so annoying when someone would say that. You're like, okay, but I'm not anymore. So like, let's talk about the now, But now I'm the person where I'm like, man, I remember when you're like this big, man. He was like grown up so much. And I guess it's as you get older, it's an old person thing, but it's a way of recognizing like, hey, you've grown, right? Yeah. But young people don't see it that way. But anyway, yeah, it was a crazy journey. But yeah, one day at a time. One day at a time.
Yeah. And the other dad and person I'm thinking about when I do the podcast and having guests like you on the show is the dad who for whatever reason is feeling quite alone in life. They might be surrounded by the busyness of family and life, and they have a partner, they've got kids, they got work, they got friends, but in the meantime, they're so alone and struggling, and nobody knows. Nobody has a sweet clue what's going on behind the facade that everything's good. And we talked about this before we hit record. You meet them in the hallway, you see them on the street, you pass them at the mall or at the store. Hey, Q, how you going? Good, Dave. Good. How are you? Awesome. Okay, have a good day. And that kind of conversation has no depth in the moment where we really don't have any idea. I don't know how your day's going. I don't really know what's happening beyond what you want me to know about you. And there's a lot of guys that are really struggling right now. And I've had some dads on that have walked some pretty dark roads. And thankfully they're still here with us, but they just felt so alone, and they felt like nobody really truly knew their struggle. And you shared a story before we had record that's happened within your circle as well. And I'm thinking of that dad today, and I want them to know that even though we can't see them and it's all virtual and they're hitting play on a podcast and it's happening later, that we're thinking about them in this moment, thinking, how do we reach these guys? How do we let them know, A, they're not alone, and B, they matter, and the world needs them? Like, how do we do that? Can you kind of unpack that?
Yeah. So, first and foremost, if you're feeling, isolated, alone, the first thing I encourage you to do is pick up the phone and call someone that you love and that you care about. And I know that might sound really easy, right? And it might sound really simple. But believe it or not, right? When a person is feeling down, and I'll talk about myself for a second here. But when I was kind of at one of my lowest moments in my life, not necessarily of saying like, hey, I'm going to commit suicide, but at the lowest moment of my life, currently, I remember feeling isolated, alone, by myself, but every single night I was going home to my family. And, but the feeling of being alone was still very present. And, I remember in one of these moments I had, where I kind of talking to myself, trying to cheer myself up, I called one of my buddies, and I hadn't talked to him for years. And I called him, and I was just kind of letting him know kind of what was going on, and expecting him to judge me and kind of ridicule me in a way. He was just like, he's like, well, and he goes, things happen. You're still here. And he goes, so what's next? How do you get to your next? And in that moment, it worked for me, but in that moment, I was just kind of like, oh shoot, you're right. Like, I'm so focused, hyperfixated on this current moment right here, right, that I have forgotten about what does my next look like, and how would I get on track? I say that because one of the biggest things I think when it comes to those that this thought process is people feel they feel lack of purpose. And when a man has a lack of purpose, especially a dad who should have all the purpose they need within their family, but when a man has a lack of purpose, that is when these thoughts start to trickle in and start to take over and start to manifest into something bigger and better, or bigger and greater, and not better but greater, and then they just become at the forefront of your mind at this entire time. But a man who has a focus, who's driven, they know what they need to accomplish. They know what they need to do. And those thoughts start going to the back, going to the back, going to the back. And as I was saying in the beginning, before we actually press record, so I just had a friend recently who did commit suicide, and he was a father of two, and he was married, and from the outside, everything did look like it was going good, right? And no one really could tell that he was having this internal battle within him, and he was the guy that would usually cheer everybody else up. You know what I mean? He was the guy that had the smile on his face. We called him Uncle B. And because he was that guy, he had the energy, and his comedy was like that uncle we're all sitting down at the Thanksgiving table, and everyone else is talking about whatever they're talking about, but super serious. And he's just kind of like, wow, this turkey's kind of dry. Who cooked this? And they just kind of like, everyone's mood just kind of changes, like, the audacity of this, but everybody else is laughing because they're like, I know. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know who cooked it, but yes, I can feel it going down.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it just lightens the mood. And that's just kind of what his personality was. And so, very few people, I won't say no one, but I think very few people asked him how he was doing. Right. And you even mentioned it, right? It's so easy for us to get on this call and say, hey, Q, how are you doing? And say, I'm good. Hey, how are you doing? I'm doing well. And everyone's like, that's an acceptable answer, and we move on, right? Rather than saying, well, okay, well, what does that mean? What? Well, you said you were good, but what does that mean? What does good mean for you? Well, this is good. This is good. These are going well. These are kind of what I'm thinking about, and the future plans are like, oh, okay, well, things do sound good, right? Because most people in the situation where they're really sad, when you ask that question, you can start to see the sadness trickle in, right? Because we like to put on a facade.
Yeah. I
did a very good job of that myself, putting on a facade of like, yep, I'm doing well. One of the sayings in the Army that that we all say, kind of was taken a form of its own, was someone could be like, hey, how you doing? And we say living the dream, right? And it is funny because we're not in a dream. This is real life. Yeah. But you hope it's a dream because you want it to be over. And it's not to say the military is so terrible, but like, it has its ups and downs, ebbs and flows. And so we always say this thing of living the dream. Well, my brother, he would like to say, he goes, living someone else's dream, but it's starting to look like a nightmare. Mm-hmm. And then, after a while, you'd be like, hey man, what's what's going on? Is everything all right? You know, and that kind of opened up the conversation to be like, well, I'm struggling with this, I'm struggling with that, and struggling with this. And so I say that because if we dig under the surface, you're able to, most people, if you pick up on social cues, you're able to see some of those things like, oh, I don't think this person is actually good. And I think this person maybe wants to vent, or maybe just needs a person just to kind of sit here with them. Unfortunately, you know, this isn't the first soldier that I knew that did this, that committed suicide. And I know a lot of people have seen the thing, what is it, 22 a day, right? Meaning, you know, within 22 veterans a day who commit suicide. I think the number has actually gone up, and it's really unfortunate. But when veterans or when anybody feels alone, you know, it's almost like you isolate yourself, right? And so that feeling of isolation, when it comes on, you've isolated yourself. And I don't want to like target these individuals to say who have committed suicide. It's their fault, right?
Yeah.
But a lot of the times, again, speaking from my experiences on this, is that feeling, when that feeling of isolation comes on, your perception kicks in and says, well, because I'm feeling isolated, that means everyone is isolating me. And so any time of in a person of just saying hello, they're like, oh, they're just doing that because, you know, they want to make themselves feel better. They don't want to make me feel better.
Yeah.
And it kind of keeps spiraling down. And my hope again is anytime you're talking to somebody, anytime you're feeling this way and you feel the onset of that feeling, talk to somebody. It's amazing what happens when we talk to people, when we talk to other men, especially. It's amazing what happens afterwards, right? Because initially we could think this conversation is going to go this way, but you don't know what that other person's thinking when whoever you're having this conversation with. And next thing you know, you're deep into this conversation and you're like, I feel so much better. I don't know why, I don't know how, when it happened, but I feel so much better. And that's what my buddy did for me. When I called him and I had this conversation with him, and I talked to him for about an hour, and I'm thinking like, hey man, I'm taking up your time. And he's like, nah, I ain't got nothing going on. And he talked to me and he listened to me and he gave me his own feedback and told me about some of the things he experienced. After that conversation, I felt a spurt of inspiration to say, okay, I'm in a rut. I need to get out of it. And I'm not alone within this rut. And if I continue to think I'm alone, I'm just going to be stuck. But I'm not alone in this rut. And so now I know I can rely on, there may not be people here close to me at the moment in the same state who I can rely on, but I have a telephone that can call worldwide, and I can call anybody and one of my friends, and they may not pick up right at the moment, but if I text them, call them, they'll call me back, say, hey man, what's going on? Everything okay?
Yeah.
And my hope is to be that to anybody, right? So with Mediocre Dads, if for whatever reason you're feeling that feeling, send me an email, mediocredads2@gmail.com. Send me an email saying, hey, things aren't going well, just want somebody to talk to. We can get on a Zoom call, we can get on a phone call, a FaceTime, whatever the case might be, right? We can get on there, and you can see my face for hopefully many more times, but you can see my face, I'll see your face, or I don't have to see your face. You can put a black screen up there for all I care, or you could just freaking talk at me, and I promise you I will listen. Because if most people just want, I won't say most people, but I know a lot of people just want someone to listen, someone who's going to just kind of like, hey, this is what's been on my mind. And the only person that I feel like I've been able to talk to is my brain. It's just me and my brain having this constant conversation, and I'm losing right now. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I hope that answers your question. I know I kind of went too deep worldwide, but like, yeah, I didn't see it coming. So when I got the phone call, I was like, I questioned it. I said, no, it didn't. You're lying. You know what I mean? But I know this person would never joke about this, like calling and say, hey, this person has passed. It was almost like my brain couldn't accept like such a cheerful person could do that. Mm-hmm. And then immediately goes to, what could I have done to maybe to just to listen, to be there, to see, to notice, right? And so now for me, part of my goal is just literally with other people is just let's go beyond just surface level stuff. Let's go a little deeper, right? You see someone on the street say, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm doing good," and they keep walking. Well, hey, I mean, you say you're doing good. It was, but you married, family. Tell me about them, right? And you'd be amazed how many people would stop and actually talk to you, depending where you are. If you're in New York, I don't think they stop and talk to anybody. But if you're in the Midwest, southern part of the western sort of part of the hemisphere or of the United States, they're more inclined to talk.
Yeah.
So,
and I think the big thing too, let's jump back to the whole idea of living under assumptions.
mm-hmm.
You talked about Costco and Sam's Club and the assumptions that kept you apart from your family in that moment. That's an assumption. That's not a fact-based decision. What you do in your job, I don't think you live under a world of assumptions. You don't do what you do and just assume you know what you're talking about or assume you know the facts. You really got to know it's evidence-based. It's all facts.
Yeah.
You're dealing in facts, no emotions, facts. And then you kind of pursue it that way. I think we should get away from assumptions when dealing and talking with our friends and family, that we assume they're okay. We assume that all things are great. Well, we assume their facade is real. And that's really who they are. We got to get out of the assumption game and really focus in on who these people really are and focus more on evidence-based relationships. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I think, a lot of people will just assume that it was one real bad thing that just drove this person to do this, and there's nothing that could have been said to be done. And in some cases that might actually be the case. However, again, like you said, that's a lot of assumptions being made about when it comes to that person, why that person made that decision, versus if we can prevent that person from getting to that point of just assuming that this individual is okay, how hard is it to have a 10-minute conversation with somebody? And you don't have to do that with everybody you come across, right? I'm not saying like, obviously we're busy people. They're busy people to an extent. We got a job we got to do, right? But like, if you took one, I would say two people. Let's forget. It's three people. I have a lot of time on day. My day starts at 6:30 and doesn't end until 1800, 6 o'clock on most cases. So like I'm there. I have a lot of time in my day, if you will. So like me taking 10 minutes to talk to three different people and really have a deep conversation with these three people to see how they're doing, I think helps minimize. Okay, I know this person's doing well. This person seems to have a lot going on. Let's investigate that more. Let's see what if there's help I can give them, help I can offer them. A simple saying like, "Hey man, like, well, have you tried talking to this individual? Because I know they might know something about going through a divorce, right?" And they're like, "No, I didn't know that person went through a divorce." I was like, "Yeah, you would never know, but they actually went through a pretty terrible divorce. To have to talk to them, they might be able to give you some insight." That simple insight and then pointing them in that direction might completely change the course of where that path that they were going of, no one wants to help me, no one's talking to me, I'm just, if it comes to it, I'm just going to end it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I'm a firm believer in our voices and being ability to talk and conversate, and just words have meaning, words have impact.
Yeah.
If we can just learn how to communicate better with one another, I think the impact is it's crazy that what could happen. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
when my kids were little, they would get frustrated because they couldn't explain to you what was going on. They wanted the toy, they wanted the cookie, whatever. They wanted the toy, something they wanted something. But I would tell them when they were little, use your words.
Yeah.
Right. Just use your words. Then I understand what you want, and then we can go that way. But in this moment, I don't understand what you want. I don't understand what you need. Nothing makes sense. You're just screaming, crying. You're having a fit. Just use your words and tell me what you need. And I think as adults, same thing. We need to use our words, whether it's adults dealing with our friends and family who We don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We need to use our words with them. If you're the one struggling and you think that everybody's walking away from you and you're alone, use your words. Like,
Yeah.
speak to somebody. Like you talked about, speak up. And, you're going to find there's people out there that really do care about you. It's a lie. It's an assumption that nobody cares in that moment.
100%.
There is somebody that cares. So
Yeah, I you wouldn't believe how many soldiers, and I speak, when I say this, I speak to my own experiences. But you wouldn't believe how many soldiers I've talked to, I've heard about, indirectly, whatever the case might be, have contemplated suicide. And so when there is this younger soldier or younger person who's struggling and are going through this trail of depression, a lot of people start to again assume that none of my leaders, none of my people that I work with would understand what I'm going through. When all actuality is, you wouldn't believe a number of people that you've talked to or came across were almost at that point where they committed, they did that act. This kind of reminds me of one of the episodes. So it was episode 18 for Mediocre Dads. My friend Young, he came on the show and he told his story about how his wife cheated on him with multiple people, and they had a daughter. They were living in Korea at the time because they were stationed out in Korea, and one of the individuals that she was sleeping with was this individual who came over his house, held his daughter, claimed that they were friends, cared about him, and all these things. But when he would go to sleep or they pass out, whatever the case might be, he's over here scheming with his wife, planning on being with his wife. And he told me as he was going through the story, he said he got to a point where he was like, you know what, I can't do this anymore. And so he tried to commit suicide, and he failed. He fortunately failed, and his daughter found him. Now his daughter, keep in mind, is at that time, she's maybe 2 years old, 2.5, right? Wow. So she's not like this older individual who understands completely what's going on, but she found him and on the floor, and just to see her dad that way, just him with her dad, kind of like seeing his dad okay, hugging him, kind of crying because she sees dad's crying. And he said he just broke down, and he was so happy that he failed, because the expression on her face, to see her face in that moment, kind of brought him to a light of like, I don't even know what I would imagine if she would have walked in and seen something else.
Yeah.
Knowing that she has to live with that image in her head. And so he was kind of like, it happened. She found me, and he goes, from that moment on, he goes, regardless of what was happening between me and her mom, it didn't matter. My focus, my priority became, how can I make sure she sees me in the happiest light? I never want to be the reason why she's just so sad and she's crying. And that to me kind of stuck with me, because I was like, because again, you can go back and watch it on episode 18 of Mediocre Dads on YouTube, and go through the whole story. But I'm telling you, when you as you're getting to the end and you get to that point, you'll start to realize, like, if for a person to go through all of that and then still come out and say, yeah, I live 5 minutes down the street from my ex, and my daughter lives with his mom. But when you see them interact, him and his ex, you would think they were just kind of like, yeah, it just didn't work out, and we would naturally went our own separate ways. You would never know this whole background story of what happened, right? And so I even remember asking him, say, hey man, how did you do that? How did you come from that point of just like out of this hole of depression? I was like, because me personally, I'd probably still be broken. And he's like, oh, that was 3 years ago. And that's how easy he just brushes it off. He's like, that was 3 years ago. Almost as if it doesn't matter, right? I'm not going to say it doesn't matter, but sometimes when he talks about it, he's just like, it was 3 years ago. And he goes, I'm telling you, you have to remember what your purpose is and why you do what you do. And he's like, that's my daughter. He goes, I want my daughter to be happy. I want her to know that dad loves her and dad cares. And if that means I have to, be amicable. I don't know the word was. Have a relationship with her with her mom. He goes, I will, and I'll do it with a smile on my face because she has a smile on her face every time she sees me.
Yeah.
And so now going back to like the suicide aspect of it is like, as fathers, our purpose. I hope your purpose is your kids. I tell everybody, for myself, is I wake up every morning, I put my uniform on, and I tie my boots. I get in my car, I drive 30 minutes to work, and I do the best that I can because I have two little girls at the house. When I come home every day, are so happy to see me that everything else in the world does not matter. So I tell everybody my purpose is my family. It's mainly my two girls. I love my wife. She knows this, but my purpose are my two girls, and that purpose drives me every single day to improve, to do better, and always strive for how can I make sure that when I come home, they have that smile on their face, right? Even though like depending what's going on, they could be upset or whatever, but every time I walk through the door, they're both waiting for me. My 5-year-old, almost 6, she's waiting for me next to her 1-year-old sister, like, Dad, hugging, and like they're waiting for me. And to see that, it warms my heart, and it gives me a whole sense of like, I can do this again tomorrow.
Yeah.
If I can come to this, I can do this again tomorrow. I can do this tomorrow. I can do this tomorrow. And even like I said in the beginning to the new dad, one day at a time. If you're a person who's feeling that, it's one day at a time.
Yeah.
Make your decisions one day at a time. Okay, hey, I did it today. I'm gonna try one more. Right. Yeah. And then one day turns into 2, turns into 3, weeks go by, months go by, years go by. And from that moment you said, I'm just gonna focus on today. It's been this huge gap, and you're like, oh crap.
Yeah. Right.
So much time has gone by. It almost felt like it happened in a blink of an eye. You know what I mean? So sorry, I ramble.
No,
I have a lot on my mind, but like,
it's good.
But yeah, it's a serious thing. And like I said, I brought my buddy Young up because anybody in his situation, after he'll hear a situation, you immediately start thinking to yourself, like, if I were in that, I don't know if I could be able to sit here and smile and talk to anybody on a podcast and then put this on the internet. Like, I don't know if I would be able to even do that. So kudos to my buddy Young. He's a very strong individual, and being able to just realign and say, this is my purpose and this is what I have to do every day. So
I love it. That's great. What a great story, Q. So we'll have a link to that episode in the show notes. I would encourage everybody to go listen to that.
Absolutely.
And if you're listening this far, thank you. And you're that person that goes, I was under the assumption that nobody cared. I was under the assumption that nobody really understood me or had time for me or cared enough to even think about me. We do. And Q put the offer out at the beginning. I'll match it, the same thing. If you need somebody to talk to, I know to you, we might be a stranger as you listen to the show. But there's a reason why we want to be there for you. And again, we're not experts in the space on this, but we're two dads who care about you and your story. And if you just need to talk to somebody, reach out to Q. We have links for him as well. And reach out to me. I'd love to chat with you and just, and be there as someone to listen. If you feel like there's no one in your circle, you got two guys right here willing to help you. So, follow through on that. And I would say to the people listening who, that name, there's a name in your head of somebody you haven't talked to in a long time. They're probably in your contacts on your phone. You haven't pushed dial on that number in a long time. You don't even know what they're up to, where they're at. And you're like, man, I haven't talked to Q in forever. I'm gonna call at the end of this episode, when this is done, you have homework. I want you to call that person. There's someone in your mind right now, and before it goes away and 100 other things fill your mind, I want you to pull the car over. I want you to stop what you're doing, and I want you to call that number on your phone for that person you haven't talked to in forever. and make that connection. Because I think you need to do that. I already know there's people I need to call right now. So I'm encouraging you, right, I'm encouraging you to do that at the end of this episode. Even if it's just short. Just, hey, thinking of you. You know, I'm not going to get into all the details around why I'm thinking about you at the moment, but I'm thinking about you. I'm wishing you well and just wanted to hear your voice. Right?
It's so much. Well, even if they don't answer, right, leave a message. I know that's an old school thing, like, you know, leaving messages. But I left my mom a message, and like she called me back within like a few hours, and she's like, "Oh, I saw you left me a message, and I just had to call you." But if I don't leave her a message, she won't call me back. The power of leaving a message. I'm telling you, it's impactful. Leave a message, and even if they don't answer, and 9 times out of 10, they're gonna get that call back from the person because now they're curious.
Right.
So
I love it. Q, thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely.
For making time out of your day to chat with us here on Dad Space to talk about your podcast as well. And again, let's just, as we close off, Q, your podcast name again, where to find it, and then how to contact you, and then we'll close off.
Awesome. Yeah. So again, like I said, I am Q, the host of Mediocre Dads. I am on all social media platforms. Mine is TikTok and Snapchat. And so YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, Facebook. Oh my gosh, so much. X, right? Yeah. I'm there. I'm all there. You just put in Mediocre Dads, you will find me. And, you know, you like and subscribe if you're on YouTube, and, you know, on Spotify, just subscribe, and just, you know, Mediocre Dads. We want to reach dads. I want to talk to dads, and not solely dads, but like, you know, that's what we're here for. That's what I'm here for. I love dads. I love talking to them and getting their experiences, because believe it or not, we have similar experiences, just slight changes, and you would never believe like what something I said, something you even said, David, that could switch someone's mind and be like, huh, I never thought of that way. I'm going to apply that.
Yeah.
So again, Mediocre Dads, you can find us on, you know, so you start on Instagram, find Mediocre Dads, and then it will take you from there. I have links in there you can follow.
And if you're listening and you're like, this Q guy is amazing, and I would agree, I would love to give him some value back for what he shared today and for his podcast. Watch his socials, watch his podcast, because there's going to be this new link at the bottom of the page when you're going through it. It's going to say something like buy me a coffee / something. You can actually donate back to Q and support him and his family, and maybe you can take the girls out for ice cream or something. So
absolutely,
definitely look for that coming up soon on all the Q stuff. But again, Q, thank you so much for doing this.
Absolutely. Oh, can I do one more thing?
Please.
Okay. One more thing. I have an episode. I don't know where this can be released, but I'm still gonna say it. Monday, I do weekly episodes. Monday, they're released Monday at 10 a.m. So today's Sunday. So tomorrow, there's going to be another episode that comes out. You won't want to miss it. I interview a gentleman who's been in education for over 20 years. So Mediocre Dads, again, every Monday at 10 a.m. You'll find a new episode. Sorry,
love it.
Appreciate it.
I love it. See, this guy knows how to plug. I love it. It's good stuff. Q, thank you so much for doing this. And we're going to have you on How to Podcast series. So if you want more Q, and we all need more Q, right? Then head over there to How to Podcast series, and we'll continue the conversation over there as well. Q, thank you so
Absolutely.
much.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for listening to Dad Space today. I'm so thankful that you were here for this episode. If you like the show, please let another dad know. Hey, that kind of rhymed. Anyways, share the episode out with somebody in your circle who would love Dad Space. That means so much to us here, for our guests who donate their time to be on the show, and we just want to see this grow. So, again, another rhyme. Oh, wow. Anyhow, I think I need to write a song or something. Thank you for being here with Dad Space, and again, looking forward to the next episode. Look forward to having you here again with us, and if we can help you in any way, if you have a great guest idea for the show, a topic that you would love us to cover, we would love to do that here on Dad Space. So thanks for listening, and thanks for being part of the community. And to you, Dad, thank you for listening, and thank you for sharing Dad Space. We'll catch you on the next one. Take care.